Hi, I'm Kitse, and this is the second video in the Learning Sizzy tutorial series. If you haven't watched the previous video, I would highly advise you to watch it because today we're going to continue and we're going to learn about the debugging panel in Sizzy and all the tabs that we have in the debugging panel. So the debugging panel is this thing that I'm going to slide out from the right side. So all of the tabs here, everything that's contained here, we call it the debugging panel. So we don't call it the DevTools, the console, those are just tabs in the debugging panel. So this entire thing is called the debugging panel. And you can see that as I drag the debugging panel in and out, all the devices shift. So even when you're in full mode, usually in a regular browser, that's one of the frustrations. You're usually working like this in a regular browser, right? And then you want to inspect something, you want to inspect element, and suddenly your DevTools are going to squeeze your entire page just to look at some element, and then it goes back. So constantly you're shifting between the DevTools like this and the DevTools like that. So what we did with the debugging panel in Sizzy, we allow you to display it in two different ways. So you can display it in fixed position, fixed meaning it's going to push whatever is on the left, and overlay position, which means it's just going to overlay on top of this. So your page is never going to shift, but the debugging panel is always going to overlay the page, and that works in any mode. So if I'm in responsive mode, you can see that instead of shifting the devices back and forth, this will, whenever we debug or whenever we inspect an element, I'm going to right click, inspect element, this is just going to pop up on top, but it's not going to shift all the devices. And you can switch the mode of the debugging panel here. So switching it to fixed will push the devices, switching it to overlay will make it on top of the devices. And when it's on the top of the devices, some of our tabs can be transparent and blurred. For example, the console. If you still want to see whatever's going on in the background, you can click on overlay settings and you can change the background opacity for this, and you can change the background blur of this so your console messages will look nicer. I think that we should also do this for the other tabs because cookies, local storage are transparent, source is kind of transparent, social is transparent, but we have like CSS overrides, which is you're writing code here. We were not sure if we should make that transparent. And then you have the custom tabs here that might or might not be transparent. But anyway, I'm going to keep the debugging panel in fixed mode, so we're not going to use overlay. And I'm going to keep showing you the rest of the buttons. We have the collapse buttons, the collapse button for opening and closing it. And we have a button called move to bottom. So I can move the entire debugging panel to the bottom, or I can move it to the right side. And the last one that we have here is something that we recently added. We have a button for undocking the entire debugging panel. So now it's going to live as a separate window. So now I can treat it as any window in Windows. So if I want, I can split. If I want, I can split the window to the left side, and I can put something else on this side. And then I can, if I want, I can dock it back, or I can use it like this. So I'm going to dock it back. I'm going to open this, and the debugging panel goes back. So at any time, you can undock the debugging panel and you can move it to another screen, use it in split screen, and so on and so forth. Eventually, we want to add options for undocking all the tabs in the debugging panel, but for now, you have to undock the entire thing. Did I cover all of the options here? Yeah, regarding the positioning of the debugging panel, we know that it might be annoying to manually just move to bottom, move to right, depending on the screen space. Like if you move Sizzy to the right half of the screen, you can see that the debugging panel will shift the position to the bottom because there's not enough space. If you make this full screen, thank you Windows for giving me those tips. I didn't know about this. When you shift it left and right, the debugging panel automatically, when you shift the window left and right, and when you resize it, the debugging panel will automatically move, and you can control that behavior in settings, debugging panel, general, and here you have two options. First of all, you can choose not to display it at all, which is not really useful because you need it. And then you have automatically position the dock debugging panel. So you can turn this off, which means that as you resize the Sizzy window, the debugging panel will just stay where it is. So if you don't want it to move, it's not going to move. But if you want it to automatically move, you can choose this option, automatically move it. And then we have like two positioning methods. You can go by the window aspect ratio, and you can even customize the aspect ratio. And you can go by window width. So you can say when the window is smaller than, let's say, 600 pixels, that's when I want the debugging panel to shift. So I'm going to make the window smaller than 600 pixels, and suddenly the debugging panel will go down when the window is smaller. So you can completely customize that behavior. I'm going to go in debugging panel general, go back to the window aspect ratio, and we're going to save that. All right, so those are the options regarding the positioning of the debugging panel. Now we're gonna go into the individual tabs, and we have a lot of things to talk about. So I'm gonna skip the console. I'm gonna go back to the console at the end. I'm gonna start with the DevTools. So in the DevTools, we have the standard Chrome DevTools right here, but there's a difference. You can choose which device you're inspecting, and the device that you're inspecting is highlighted here in this select. And as you're inspecting elements, for example, I can click in iPhone 11 Pro and I can click inspect. You will see that this will go to iPhone 11 Pro, and it should have went to the element, but there's this bug that we're trying to, it's basically an Electron bug, but we're trying to fix the bug. And sometimes it might not load the DevTools. That's why we added this refresh DevTools button here. Sometimes it loads perfectly on the first try. Sometimes it doesn't load at all. So as you can see, I cannot, when I'm inspecting this same device, it's fine. But when I'm jumping into another device, the DevTools will get stuck and I have to refresh them. It's something that we tried to fix so many times on our side, but at the end of the day, it's a weird Electron bug and we're waiting for them to fix it. It's always easier to blame things on the other team. It's the Electron team, it's not us at all. So as I'm switching DevTools here, you can see that the DevTools will load and I can inspect if I go into the inspector, I can inspect this device. But this is not really useful because usually we want to inspect all the devices at once. So what we added here is something called Universal Inspect that allows you to just inspect all the devices at once. And you can just easily click into any device. So I can click here, which should... this is getting annoying. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click View, Reload, which usually should get rid of this annoying bug with the DevTools. But let's see. I'm going to go Universal Inspect. Now I'm going to inspect iPhone 11 Pro. And yeah, as I told you, sometimes when like closing Sizzy and opening it will fix these DevTools bugs, and refreshing here won't fix anything. So if you don't want to restart the app, you can just go View, Reload, or press Alt Control R, which is going to reload the entire Sizzy view, and the DevTools will be back to normal. So I was explaining the Universal Inspect, and with the Universal Inspect, you can just inspect any element here, and it's going to jump to the DevTools of that device, and you can see that I can inspect any element. I can also press Ctrl-Shift-C, and you can see a little green icon turns on here, meaning that the Universal Inspect is active. I can press Ctrl-Shift-C again to deactivate it. So at any point you can either click here or you can press Ctrl-Shift-C or Command-Shift-C on macOS, and you will inspect all the elements. You can just click on element. It's going to switch to the DevTools of that device, and you're going to switch to the element inside of that device. Next up, we have the DevTools extensions. You can have the standard browser DevTools extensions. So if you click on DevTools extensions here, you're going to be taken to Settings, DevTools extensions. You can also go to Settings, DevTools extensions manually. And here you can install, for example, the React DevTools and the Redux DevTools, the MobX developer tools. You have all sorts of extensions here. I said that I'm going to dive into the settings another time, so I'm not going to continue with this. We're just going to leave this as it is and move on. So that's what we have in the DevTools tab. I explained the Universal Inspect, and I told you that you can right click and inspect an element in order to jump. So what's going to happen if I'm in another tab and I click here, and even if this is not open, and if I click right click inspect, this will open the DevTools for that device, and we're going to go and be focused on that element. Let's move on. We have the cookies. This is the cookies editor, and in this cookies editor, we made it accessible, first of all, meaning that you can easily see all of the cookies. You don't have to dive into DevTools, then application, then wherever the menu for the cookies is. You can just jump to cookies here, and you will see all of your cookies. You can easily delete them. And one nifty thing that we added is you can change the expiry date with a calendar component. So you can say that the expiry date will be this one. So you can easily test some logic in your app that you have with cookies. And of course, you can add new cookies, and you can clear all the cookies, and you can refresh all the cookies and search them. So we have the same thing for local storage, except for local storage, we don't have a date picker for the calendar because local storage is just key and value, and you can clear the entire local storage, clear individual items, and so on and so forth. Moving on, we have the source. So you can have the source of the app by clicking here, or what you can do is you can right click any device and you can just do view source, which is going to jump to the source tab and is going to show you the source of that device. so you have it easily accessible here. You don't have to open it in a separate window. Next up, we have the social preview, which is really important and really useful. You can see, and this is a live view, as you're working on your meta tags for your website, you can see the preview when you're going to share your website on social media. So if I switch to another website, like let's see, twizzle.app, I think this one also has, yeah, these are the meta tags. If I switch to kitsa.io, I don't know if I added meta tags, but maybe it's going to be good if it's completely broken, just to show that it's completely broken. Yeah, so the images are completely broken, and this will tell you that you need to work on your social preview, because when people share it, it's going to look like this. But if I go to one of the blog posts, I think that for every blog post I have a meta tag. So yeah, you will see that the preview image is here, and if I want to inspect the actual raw meta tags, I can click here, and here I will see the exact values, and here I will just see the preview, and I can just reload the preview if for some reason the preview wasn't loaded. I'm gonna go back to sizzy.co, and we are planning to add more previews here, like for Telegram, Discord, so on and so forth. And we're gonna try to keep them as updated as possible to their real, to the real Twitter, Facebook, Google, Slack previews. So that's the social tab, and as I said, it works live. So as you're changing your meta tags, you can see the previews live. Next up, we have CSS Overrides, and I think this is the last tab that we have here. So all of the other tabs that I've added are custom tabs. So let's finish with this one, and then we're going to move on to custom tabs. So CSS Overrides is also something that we recently added. I'm going to zoom in a little bit because I'm trying to deal with the fact that I'm getting old, and I'm zooming in everything, every single thing. Articles I read on the internet, my code, and even this CSS Overrides panel. I specifically requested the zoom in and out feature because I couldn't see. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit, and we're going to play with the CSS override. So what you can do here is you can write CSS that's going to be instantly previewed on all the devices. So I can say that for all of the devices, I want the color to be red. So now the color will be red, and if some of the elements are not red, I can say important, and now all of the elements, all of the text elements will be red. And this CSS will be applied to all of the devices. So what you can do is you can also add specific CSS for particular devices. So this style will be applied for all devices, but I can say that I want to experiment and I want to try something. So I'm going to copy this style, and I'm going to say on the iPhone 11 Pro, I would like the color to be green, important. Then on the iPad Pro 11, I would like the color to be purple, and maybe I can play with the font size or something. So I can say font size is going to be 100 pixels. Well, that's too much. 50 pixels important, but this makes it easy so you can experiment with certain styles on one device, certain styles in another device, and when you decide that this is the style that you want, you can just copy it and put it in your CSS style sheet, and you don't have to constantly go back and forth between your editor and Sizzy when playing with CSS. You can just easily do that here. If you want to clear the individual styles, you can click clear, which is going to clear the styles for this device. If you want to clear all the styles, you can just clear all. Or if you want to prettify the code, like if you have a mess like this, you can click prettify, and this is going to format your code. Now I'm going to click clear all, and all the styles will be cleared. So what if we're using CSS in JS and we have complex class names? We thought of that too. So this page is using CSS in JS, so I can click on pick element to override, and now this is going to put me in universal inspect, and it's going to find the most accurate selector. For example, if I click on this, it's going to give me the most accurate selector for this element, and here I can say that the opacity for all devices, I want it to be 0.5 or 0.1. So you can see that the opacity for this S thing is now 0.1. I can inspect another element, I can take this Sizzy logo maybe, and I can say that the font size is going to be 100 pixels, and I can continue experimenting with this. The pick element to override is really useful, especially when you have random class names generated by CSS in JS. So I'm going to clear all the styles, and I think you got the entire point of the CSS overrides, and we're going to move on. So before I move on to the other tabs, I want to show you that you can customize all of the tabs that you see here. So you can right click any tab and you can hide it. So if I don't need, I forgot about the console tab. So before we go into customization, I'm going to talk about the console tab because it's really, really important. So I'm going to go to a website that we made as a demo for playing with the console. And I'm going to show you, basically this website is just a bunch of buttons for printing console logs. And you can see some console logs already printed. So why did we make our own console instead of just using the console that's here? So the console that's here obviously works, but you would have to switch between devices in order to see all the console messages for each device, because there's no like universal console DevTools thing. So what you get in the Sizzy Console is you get the logs from all devices, and you can filter them. You can say, you can see I got, let me zoom in because I'm old. Component did mount for iPhone 11 Pro, component did mount for Galaxy S7. So all the devices, whatever they printed, we can see it here, and I can filter that. I can say I want to see the logs only for iPhone 11 Pro, and I'm going to go back to all devices. So there's a lot of, this is just the gist of why we added the console, to have like universal place for all the logs, but we have a lot of things that are better and more customizable than any console you would find in a regular browser. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to print some errors here. I'm going to print a table, and I'm going to print some debug, and I'm going to print some info. And obviously the table gets screwed up when I'm zooming in. So I'm going to zoom out just a little bit so we get the pretty table. And I think that there's something, no, the warnings are totally fine. So as you can see, when I printed all of these things, I got like a summary here on the top. So we have 5 errors, we have 6 warnings, and we have 14 logs. So what we can do with these buttons is we can just hide particular set of logs. So I can say I want to toggle the errors, so I don't want to see the errors. This is a pro tip. If you don't want to see errors in your app, just hide them. You're not going to see them. You'll be fine. But this is, jokes aside, this is useful if you just want to focus on the errors for a while. You can just toggle the warnings, toggle the logs, and you can just look at the errors, which doesn't mean you delete them. They're still here, and at any point you can just bring them back. If you actually want to clear them, you can just clear on the you can click on the clear button, which is going to clear the logs. So I can clear the logs, I can clear the warnings, and I can clear the errors, and you can see the summaries are gone. The console is empty again. So let me print logs and warnings and errors and infos and debugs from different devices, just so we can have more things in the console. And I can continue explaining the other features. So clear all, obviously it clears all the logs. Here we have some settings, which I'm going to show in a second. And if we don't have enough screen space, so I'm going to try to, come on Windows, thank you for the tips. So I'm going to try to just make this like this. And I can show you that we have buttons for scrolling to bottom and scrolling to top. So if your console is too big, you don't have to manually scroll it. You can just easily scroll to bottom and scroll to top with the buttons that are provided there. What else do we have for the logs? So if I hover here, I should see the device name, which sometimes, wait, did I disable that? Show tooltips for your elements in the app. It's not disabled, so that's very weird that I'm not getting the tooltip. I should be getting a tooltip with, oh, there it is. So as you can see, when I hover the device name, it's going to tell me where did the log come from, so which device printed this log. And one thing that honestly is not that intuitive, but we added it as a shortcut, is if you click this, you can filter out this particular message. So if you never want to see this message again, or any message that contains the word body, you can just add that message filter. So we're going to say if any console message contains body, I don't want to see it anymore. So when you click OK, you will see that that message will disappear now. So even if the devices print that message, you're not going to see that message. Which brings me to the console settings. So I'm going to click on console settings, and in console settings, this song is a little bit distracting, so I'm going to change it. You can see that when I click on console settings, it basically jumps into settings, console, and then general. So here we have general console settings and we have filters. So I'm going to show you what both of them do. I don't want to make this video too long, so we have like 10 minutes left, and we're going to try to explain everything regarding the console and the customization of the tabs in this last 10 minutes. So in the console feed, first of all, before we go into the filters, I'm going to show you how we can customize the console. So you can customize where you want to see the backgrounds, the borders, the icons, the device icon, and if you want to clear the console on page navigation. So first of all, I'm going to focus on the styles. You can choose your font size here for the console, and you can see the console will look like a traditional console looks like here. I don't know why do I not see warnings. I think because the message is filtered out. So I'm going to remove the message body and I'm going to click save, and you can see that the warnings are with yellow color. So if you don't like this cluttered view of the console, especially like if you're in overlay mode, this looks like very cluttered and ugly. You can go into console settings and you can disable the backgrounds, the borders, the icons, and maybe even the device icon, and you will get a very clear console. So now you can just play with the blur. Maybe you can add a bit of overlay, and you're gonna get this clear look of the console. I mean, the options are there, so you can choose whatever you want. I'm just showing you the options, and I'm gonna bring back the device icon, and I'm not gonna bring back the backgrounds and stuff. What else do we have here is listen to logs from only one device. So if I turn this on, instead of getting the logs from all devices, I would have to choose from which device am I reading the logs. So now I have to choose, and I don't get the option to pick all devices, because listening from all devices just slows the app down a little bit, because there's a lot of things going on in the background. But if you want that, you can definitely keep listening to the logs from all devices. And then you have a setting for clearing the console on page navigation. So whether you want to lose the logs whenever you refresh the page, so I'm going to say no, and I'm going to print a bunch of logs here and a bunch of errors. I'm going to switch back to all devices so we can see them. And if I reload the page, you will see that the logs will stay here. So if I'm testing something in between reloads, I don't want the console to reload, I can just turn off this option here. Now if I turn it on and if I reload, the console will be cleared. So last thing I'm going to show you regarding the console is the console filters, which are really powerful, because usually when you look at your console, you have too many things going on there, and so many things that should be warnings are errors. So when you're looking for an actual error, when you're looking for an actual message, you usually get lost in between all the messages. So that's why we added this option for adding console filters. So as I said, you can add a console filter, like if you have a big complex message, you can just filter it out from here, and then you can customize this message from here, or you can go in console settings, filters, and you will see that these are all of the filters that I disabled here. Actually, in my this is not my development machine, so on my development machine I have probably more than like 30 filters of errors, warnings, and annoying messages that are just there and are not really useful, like React hot loader reloaded, or you should download the React DevTools, or there's a warning, each child in the, like, some of these are useful. For example, each child in a list should have a unique key prop, might lead to a bug. But if you know what you're doing, if this is getting annoying to you, you can just disable the warning if you don't want to see that message ever again. Or anything regarding the Apollo DevTools or ESLint or hot module reloading, you can see I have all of these filters. I can easily disable all of these filters and enable or delete them, and I can add new filters. Let's say that I don't want to see any message that says component did mount, so I never want to see this message. We're going to add the filter here. When I click save, you're going to see that the message that contained component did mount now disappeared, and I'm going to bring it back now, component did mount, and we're going to get the messages with component did mount. If I disable all the filters, in my case, we're not going to get anything because I'm not filtering any of these messages. This should be super useful. Like, all of these options that we added should be super useful, so you can clean up your console and see the things that you actually need to see in the console. All right, so that explained the console. We have 7 more minutes, and I'm going to explain the customization of the debugging panel because we're not done yet. So what I wanted to tell you before I started explaining the console is you can customize any of these tabs and you can hide them. So I can right click and just hide any of these tabs, right click, hide the local storage tab. And the good news, they're not really completely hidden and you can always get them back. So if I hide this source, I can use Butler, which I'm going to talk about more in one of the next videos. I can press Ctrl+Shift+P and I can say, what did I hide? Local storage. So this is going to open it as a dialog. So I still have access to it and I can access it through the Butler. Or if I hide the social tab from here, I can still go into Butler and press social. So this is going to show me the social preview right here in a dialog. So when you hide the tabs, you can still access them. If you don't need them all the time, you can access them through the Butler. I'm going to explain more about Butler in one of the future videos. So what I can also do here is I can right click and click customize debugging panel, and that's going to open the settings. I can get to the same setting by going into settings and then debugging panel and then general tabs, custom tabs. I already showed you the general tab about the positioning. Now we're going to go into tabs. You can see that I have all the tabs here, so I can enable all of them, and I'm going to enable all of the tabs, but I'm going to go and show you the custom tabs. So here you can enable and disable the default tabs, but here you can also add custom tabs. And I have this as examples. I have these tabs as examples. Basically, a custom tab can be any website, but it's not about putting website, it's about putting DevTools there. Because I got frustrated by using these tools like Prisma Studio and Storybook and Playground and Graphicule and so on and so forth. I would have to open them in the reference browser or in another browser, and I wanted them to be there all the time. So whenever I wanted to explore GraphQL, I wanted to have an option to just click here, and now I can just write my GraphQL queries and stuff. So we decided to add custom tabs to the debugging panel, which are basically going to point to a URL. So if I go back to the custom tabs, you will see that every tab is a URL. So I found these demo websites for Prisma Studio and Playground and Graphicule and Storybook. But in reality, what you would have here is something like localhost 3000 or wherever your Prisma Studio is running or your Graphical Playground is running. So you can add all of those and they're going to appear as tabs here. I'm going to click cancel and you will see that I have all of these tabs for Playground, Graphicule. You can have Storybook here. You can have a design reference. You can take your design, your Figma file or URL or whatever you have, you can put it here as a URL. So you can easily have it near the devices and you can easily reference how your buttons look like or whatever while you're working on your app. So for the custom tabs, we have options for right-clicking and reloading the tabs because they're basically URLs. So what I can do here is do right-click reload, which is going to reload the page. And I don't have that for the normal tabs. And I can also hide them. So if I don't want to see some of these tabs, I don't know why I added this Google tab, honestly. And yeah, you can also go through the settings, custom tabs, and just hide them from here or delete them from here. So super useful option. If you want to create a new one, you can just add create and you can say Yahoo. I don't know why would you pin Yahoo as a tab, but you might want to. And you will have all of these websites and custom tabs here. I think we covered everything regarding the debugging panel. And I said that I want to keep these tutorial videos around 30 minutes. So we have 3 minutes left. Maybe I can show you some of the Butler shortcuts for the debugging panel. So you can open Butler with Control-Shift-P and you can just type any of these tabs. You can say cookies, which is going to jump to the cookies. Even if the debugging panel is closed, you can just say cookies or source, which is going to take you right to the source tab in the debugging panel. So even when it's closed and you want to quickly preview something, you can just say social in Butler and you can just click and it's going to jump into the social tab. I don't think that you can, yeah, you can also undock the debugging panel through Butler. So you can just do undock debugging panel. So we have an action for that. Press enter. The debugging panel is going to pop up in a separate window. And I think that you can, if you do social now, it's not going to focus it. It's something that we need to do, but you can dock it back. So you can say dock debugging panel, and now it's going to be docked back here. I think I showed you literally everything down to the last detail of the debugging panel. You will see that these icons collapse and from these tabs collapse and from label tabs, they're going to become icons. Eventually, at some point, we're going to allow you to add custom icons for your custom tabs. And honestly, I think that's enough. I showed you enough for the debugging panel. Hopefully everything is clear. Looking forward to recording the new video. So if you like these tutorials videos, make sure to subscribe. And soon, hopefully, we're going to have a playlist with every single feature that we have in Sizzy. Let me know down in the comments if this was actually useful for you, and if you learned something, and I'm going to see you in the next one. Bye bye.